Welcome to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open City video lesson program. Now we are discussing on research design, specially for the benefit of BA Sociology semester 4 and MA Sociology first year, first semester research methodology and social statistics course. In this session, we will discuss about the descriptive research design and experimental research design. Today we have an expert, a resource person who is specialized in research methodology. He is Professor S.F. Chedishekar, Professor and Head HR, Sivasivani Institute of Management, Kompelli, Hyderabad. Welcome you, sir.
Yes.
Welcome to our studios. And sir, can you explain about briefly about the what is research design and the types of research design?
Yeah. Now, thank you very much once again for introducing me to your audience. Dear students, I would like to congratulate you on your selecting a course like this, because life is full of possibilities. You can understand them only through concept of research. Every time you go to a shop, you want to buy something, don't you examine it? It's a research process, you've just started it. So therefore, as you go and make a choice, ultimately the purpose of research is to make a better choice. Anything for that matter, because life is all about making choices. And whatever the choice you make, whether it's good, bad, ugly, you have to live by that. So therefore, in my opinion, without research, it's very difficult to live in our societies. I'm sure if you don't understand this concept of research and then start living, probably you are deceived. Probably you made a lot of losses in your life. So therefore, I'm sure you will take this kind of a course more seriously and then start exploring passion for a topic called research. Now, incidentally, we are talking about the concept of research design, which is by and large a complete plan. It's a detailed plan, or it's also called a framework of research activity one would pursue very systematically. So in other words, it's a design which helps you to understand right from first stage of initiating, or what we call selecting a topic, to problem formulation, to identification of concepts, to understanding of what are your variables, and then proposing hypothesis, and then selecting the type of design, which we will talk further today, and then how to collect the data, how to analyze the data, what kind of softwares to use, what kind of statistical tests to use, and finally how to write a report. Now, as I have summarized the whole process of research in just one few lines, now if you put all of these steps together, it is by and large called research design. It's a complete plan, a detailed framework of entire research activity carried out until the submission of a project report, or you call dissertation in your university system. I hope that message is understood. Now, further to continue, designs help us to systematize our research activity. For example, next time when you go to any place, how do you start observing those places? Or you go to a village, how do you start approaching the village? Next time when you go to a retail outlet, how do you start approaching any of those aisles where you have all those products displayed? How do you approach? Which product is where? They would have definitely displayed it, but you would still struggling to search for that product. So you might be asking some people, don't you think all this is also called research? Trying to understand what, when, where, how, why, and who. These are the 6 questions that keep surfacing in our lives. You cannot live without those questions. So I hope you have understood what is design. It's a detailed plan. It's a detailed plan. And it's also called a blueprint finally. Blueprint means without blueprint, you cannot construct your house. Blueprint which has to be approved by the building authorities, by the government. Thank you. I hope I have conveyed that idea by and large.
So, in a nutshell, you have explained that it is nothing but a blueprint for the research work. Now we will start with the descriptive research design, sir. So, first of all, what is descriptive research design?
Yeah.
You can just give it the certain meaning of its.
Yeah. As you see on the display, there are 3 broad types of research designs. But otherwise, if you go by any other textbooks, there are many textbooks in research, social research particularly, you would find different names like case study design, survey design, longitudinal design, diagnostic design, analytic design. There are many names given for various types of designs. But in my opinion, there are three broad designs, and many of those which I have just now spelt out might be brought under what we call the descriptive research design. Exploratory research design helps us to explore anything unexplored, whereas descriptive design is a very interesting design, and I am sure you will also find a question in your examination, which type of design is more predominant in sociological studies in India. So, probably I am emphasizing that particular question. Now, I would say 90 to 95% of research studies in sociology are conducted using descriptive research design. I hope the message is loud and clear. 90 to 95% of research studies conducted in India are using descriptive research design. Now, as I further go into descriptive research design, I would want you to understand what is it all about. As I told you previously also, when you look at the word descriptive, likewise exploratory, the word itself has an answer. Descriptive research design talks about describing the characteristics of any unit that is under study. In other words, what if you are trying to describe the characteristics of a sample of people? Sample includes people, products, situations. Sample includes many units, many items in the society. So, next time when you go to a general store, what kind of groceries that you are purchasing, you might be looking at all of those characteristics of, let us say, a handful of rice that you pick up from a gunny bag. That handful of rice is basically a representative bunch of rice of the whole gunny bag, but are you not trying to understand the characteristic of that rice by doing like this?
Yes,
you look at each of the cords of the rice to look at whether it is broken or is it old or is it new. You will smell it. What exactly are you doing? You are trying to understand the characteristics of the bunch of rice that is in your hands. Same analogy is applicable. Descriptive research design is all about understanding the characteristics of any sample under study or any population that is being under studied. So, what are you trying to do? You are only trying to describe the characteristics of those population. I can give you quite a lot of examples. For example, I would want to know what is the shoe size of women in Hyderabad. You think everybody will have same shoe size? Honestly, no. So, then we have to go by what is the average shoe size of women in Hyderabad. So, if I am the shoe manufacturer, what I would do? I would look at the average shoe size. So, but if I do not know the average shoe size, how many sizes should have produced? Have to produce? How many sizes and how many numbers or how many lots? That is a very tough, challenging question. So, therefore, if I knew the average shoe size of women in Hyderabad, so large quantities of that shoe size I might manufacture. And then there is something called deviations. Some people's shoe size could be a little deviation from the average, a little lesser or little more than the average. So, how many lots of such deviations sizes should I be manufacturing? I can understand all of this using a descriptive research design. In other words, descriptive research design helps us to describe the characteristics of the sample under study, and sample includes people, sample includes products, sample includes situations, sampling includes events, samples could be any items or any entities. I think that should be the message we should all be taking. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So, in continuation, what are the pros and cons of using descriptive research design in sociological studies?
I think we finally have to end up in that when should I adopt it or when I should not, based on the pros and cons of this design. So, if you knew what are the pros and cons of the design, because in the previous understanding we had that 90 to 95% of research studies conducted in sociological understanding or sociological phenomenon. includes descriptive design, or they adopt descriptive design. So, therefore, you must definitely understand what are the pros and cons of it. Now, one of the major advantages of descriptive design, it gives you immediate understanding of what are the characteristics of the people under study. Like for example, you want to know the age of the people, age of women, age of children. I think it is a descriptive statistical test, right? Mean, median, mode are called descriptive statistics. So, if I want to know the average age of women, average age of children, average age of people in Hyderabad, I am using descriptive research design. Even if I want to understand the average shoe size of men or women or children, I am still using descriptive research design. So, with such kind of a basic information, I can go ahead and manufacture, that means I can make a decision. If I do not know the average age of the respondents, how I can move further in making any decisions regarding young people or old people or middle people or children? It sounds little difficult. So, therefore, descriptive research design helps us in understanding the basic characteristics of the samples under study. In descriptive research design, I thought I would give some more important information about descriptive research design. If researchers or if sociological students have to conduct a research study using this kind of a design, you must also understand that there are supportive designs which are called basically subtypes. So, I might later on move into that, but subtypes include let us say the analytic design. These are called subtypes. So, analytic, then you may have diagnostic, then you may have survey design, then you may have case study designs. All can be brought under the category of descriptive design. For example, why would I call analytic design? In many studies, I have seen students using descriptive and analytic design, which is a subtype of descriptive again. So, in descriptive, what are we trying to do is we are just describing the characteristics of the people. But if you want to analyze, which means if you want to make any kind of comparisons, let us say for example, what is the average shoe size of men and women in Hyderabad? I am making a comparison. Earlier I said average shoe size of women. Simply describe the characteristics of the sample called women. But if you want to analyze men and women's shoe size, it should be called analytic, descriptive analytic research design. So, I hope the subtypes are further understood better. Likewise, if you want to understand what is called a simple survey design, you just have to collect a large sample, understand the characteristics of that large sample. We call it survey design. So, don't you think it still sounds like a descriptive design? Likewise, if you want to study a case study design, let us say. Now, I gave some example like there is one particular community in Nizamabad. They are suffering from a peculiar health problem, and you want to compare that community in relation to the other communities. For example, even if you look at COVID-19, in the first phase, Europeans suffered more. Quite a lot of deaths occurred in Italy, France, Germany, Sweden and so on. Whereas in the second phase, you had noticed its surge was too much in Asian countries, Hong Kong, Thailand, other places, Singapore. Now the third phase, most of the Indians suffered from third phase. But now the fourth phase, what we are witnessing today, the Singapore and many other nations are suffering already. Now, if you want to make a comparison of what made these nations suffer in different phases, it could be called analytic research design, or it could also be called a case study design. Let us say for example, now many people say that this latest COVID virus had surfaced earlier in Singapore. Why Singapore? If I take Singapore COVID situation, I would probably say it is a case study design. Only one country I am doing it. But earlier we have taken Asia. Hong Kong was called the hub of what you call the spread. It was the hub of spread. From there it spread to rest of the countries. Now, if I want to study the source of spreading in Hong Kong, probably that would be called a case study design. So, if I am picking up one particular community, one tribal community or one particular city, one particular village or one particular state or country and go intensively or study intensive in depth, probably that should be called a case study design. But don't you think we are still trying to describe the phenomena in that study, in that state, in that city, in that village, in that community? Still it should be called descriptive, because you are simply describing how is this phenomena. In other words, you are just trying to understand the surface or the what you call the origin of the phenomenon, and you are also going deep into the comparison of the phenomenon across communities. You are also going deep into it, understanding the nature of the problem. You are trying to understand the degree of the problem or the severity of the problem. You are trying to understand the extent of its spread, that means extent of the problem. So, the nature, the degree, the extent, the severity. If you want to understand all of this, you would still be calling them descriptive analytic designs only. But what if you want to understand the cause and effect? It would be called diagnostic design, but still you are trying to describe the phenomenon. Even when you are diagnosing, that means you are trying to understand the cause. There could be many causes, but trying to understand the root cause, which is not part of descriptive design. That is the limitations of this design. So, I will just give an overview of what are the disadvantages of it or limitations of it. In descriptive design, you cannot go beyond describing the phenomenon or phenomena. At the best, you can only describe the nature, the degree, the strength or severity of the problem, but you cannot go beyond them. If you want to pinpointedly identify the root causes, descriptive design is helpless. It cannot help us. So, therefore, we may have to go into the next type of design. I think we may have to now slowly get into the next type of design. I think Professor Ramana will accept that point.
Yeah. Sir, thank you, sir, for explaining about the descriptive research design in detail. And in the same continuation, now we will go for the experimental research design.
Yeah.
So what is experimental research design and what are its uses and other disadvantages?
Okay. Now, earlier also I was trying to say that by just looking at the phrase, you should have an iota of understanding, at least the basic understanding. When I say experimental research design, again there is a word called experimental. When you look at the word experimental, you are just trying out. You are trying out something because you have an idea from previous designs. If descriptive design can help us to understand the characteristics of the sample, probably with those characteristics, can I go a little deeper and find out what could be the cause of that problem? So, when I am trying to find out the cause, remember that is a very important word, cause. Everybody wants to know the cause. If you remember the 6 serving men from that poem which we talked about earlier, the last but one server or the servant is called why. So, why? If you want to understand why things happen to me always, many people say that why me? Why me always? Why should I suffer when others are enjoying life? Why only everything goes wrong with me when others are having nice time? So, if you want to find out that concept, I think you need to learn about experimental research design. In fact, in my opinion, sometimes people might differ. In my opinion, experimental research design is the real research design, or it is called the true research in my opinion, because as I move into the next point, you will understand that you can use or you can test the cause and effect in this design. You can find out exactly the cause and effect design. I want to give you one analogy. I myself, my wife, my son and my daughter, all of us have gone to a restaurant, and then we had order for various types of foods. We had nice time, because every time when my son or daughter top the class list, we always have a plan to go out and we will have nice dinner. It is a sort of celebrations, because generally we celebrate for nothing. We celebrate all those events which are naturally given to us, like birthdays, anniversaries, they are all naturally occurring. I do not know why we should celebrate the natural occurrences, But when you achieve, why don't you celebrate? People may not like me because I am a very controversial fellow when it comes to that idea. But believe me, all of us have ordered various things, and I finally, after reaching home next morning, I fell sick. I want you to understand what would have caused, because all the other three, my wife, my children also had food, but they are all healthy, but I am alone sick. Could you guess what could be the reason? I can give you some information. For example, my wife ordered for some naan, some dal, some vegetables, I think some chicken. And then my son also similarly had, and then my daughter also had something very similar. Probably she had ordered for some prawns and things like that. And then I ordered for some fish. So they all ate various things. I also ate various things, but they didn't fall sick, but I fell sick. Could anybody guess what could be the reason? If you can answer that question, probably you understood what is called experimental research design, because they might not have eaten one particular item which I ate, and that could have caused or triggered sickness in me next morning. So what could be that one particular item which I ate but they couldn't, they didn't? Had they ate, probably they also would have. Then after we would have said that, yeah, you ate fish, no? That's why I think you became sick. Maybe the fish was not fresh. Maybe stale food was served in that hotel. I am sure in India, when you are unhappy with a hotel, you will never go to that hotel. Whereas
so that is nothing but cause and effect.
You are trying to find out.
Yes.
You are exactly finding out what could be the cause of that health issue.
Yes.
They also ate all the items, but particularly what they did is they didn't eat an item which I ate.
Right.
And probably that would have triggered my sickness. So if you want to understand what exactly caused and what is the effect, you can conduct experiments. So that's why this design is called the most perfect research design, or it is also called true research design, because we are trying to understand the cause and effect. And in order to do so, if you want to go deep into this subject, you must understand there are three important features of this design. Number one, you have to talk about what is called control group. You must also be talking about what is called experimental group, and then finally there is something called random assignment. If you can understand these three terms, our job becomes much easier, or we can understand things, because as I move further in this discussion, I want our students to understand the complexities of it, because this is actually the real research probably somebody can pursue in the future. Let us say, for example, what is control group? A group of participants who would not be introduced to what you call the change agent. So in an experiment, we always introduce something which can cause change. That's why we are using the word called manipulating. So cause is called independent variable, effect is called the dependent variable. So if I can change the independent variable, do you think the dependent variable also changes? If I can ensure that it is happening, that means I would know exactly what is causing. Likewise, let us say, I am not going deep into all of those issues for the want of the time, but in experiments you have to understand that experimental group participants will be given the treatments or any change inducing elements, whereas the control group will not be. So in which case what you would do, only experimental group people will experience change, but not the control group, because control group is deprived of any interventions or any treatments or any, let us say, any medicine or any drug. So particularly if you want to see, let us say, why young people in the villages are still not pursuing the government schemes for their progress. If you want to know that, I think you can conduct an experiment. Do one thing, you can divide the young people in a village into two groups. One group is not given any lecture on any government schemes, the other group is given lecture on any other scheme, and you strictly tell the other group, which is called experimental group, don't tell it anything that you have learnt in this session to the control group people. They are simply entertained in a classroom. So experimental group people, young people, would go to government and then start applying for various schemes. They benefit. Whereas control group people will not benefit, because they didn't know anything about any government schemes which are never introduced to them in a classroom. Now here exactly you are introducing something called teaching or a lecture. That lecture is called the intervention. That knowledge is called the intervention. So when you introduce this knowledge, what would happen? The participants in the class 2 will have access to all that knowledge. They will immediately go and apply for government schemes, whereas The students in the first class, which is called control group, they are not exposed to any lecture except for some entertaining topics. They will be deprived of all those government schemes. They will not benefit from it. So, what exactly does it mean? My lecture is causing change in a group of participants, and therefore, they are benefiting in their lives. Likewise, I am sure many times you would have noticed somebody would have given you a free detergent. They want to know how is your cloth before using that detergent and how is it after using the detergent. That is a simple experiment. I can even give you many more examples like that. Farmers, they are, let us say, a cotton crop farmer. He wants to know which pesticide does benefit. So, you can try 3 pesticides in 3 different plots of land, then you would know which plot gives more yield, and the pesticide sprayed in that plot is the winner. And is a control plot where you do not spray any pesticide, just a dummy pesticide which is called a placebo, simply water spray. That entire control plot will be gone, no more yield in it, 0 yield. But the benefit of understanding is which brand of pesticide really works. You can try that out through conducting experiments. I think by now I have sufficiently given an explanation of why experiments are very important.
What are the one limitation of this?
Yeah, it is a very time consuming, unless you have a lot of money, lot of encouragement from government bodies or NGOs, we can do that, otherwise no.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming over here and explaining in detail about the descriptive research design and experimental research design to our learners, and thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.